Hi, friends. Welcome again to another episode of Beyond the Clouds Edge to Edge Transformation. And transformation has to happen at every level. I've been meeting some amazing entrepreneurs. And Chuck, I met him at a Silicon Catalyst presentation for the last 6 months. It was really amazing to hear the story of all autonomous imaging. For once, AI doesn't stand for artificial intelligence.
Actually, it does a little bit. We use AI ML in our system. The OW AI has a double entendre in this particular case on purpose.
That's perfect. So, Chuck, tell us, how did you end up being the Chuck that we know now? And how did you end up being in this company, which is so amazing?
Well, I've been in the tech industry for 3+ decades. I've had a very extensive career on the semiconductor side. I've also worked in IoT and networking, both on the digital and analog side of the business. So a long, long career at the chip level, at the subsystem level, and even at the system level in some of the companies. So seen a little bit of everything.
And tell us a little bit about Owl Imaging. What do you guys do?
So OWI, we is a company that I co-founded with my partner Gene Petilli roughly 5 years ago. At the time, Gene had been working on advanced imaging technology in the thermal domain. He and I had worked on a project for the U.S. Air Force that was quite sophisticated. The beauty of that Air Force project was it was a proof of concept, and the company that we worked for was able to retain all the intellectual property rights. And that company's intellectual property rights eventually came to us to start a new company. So what got us motivated and what we do at OAI is we basically build a thermal night vision system. And then we couple that with perception software, specifically AI ML software. And the purpose of that is basically for safety. So we build systems that go into automobiles, trucks, cars, buses that are able to, independent of the driver, visualize the entire scene and make real-time decisions on being able to avoid collisions, accidents, pedestrians, animals, etc. The system is designed in such a way that the driver, of course, could take action first, but if the driver fails to respond, the system can take over in ample time to make a safety decision. And the goal of the company is simply to save lives.
And honestly, when you told us about the data, how many pedestrians get hurt, especially when it's dark, that was quite alarming. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the statistics are not at all comforting in any way, shape, or form. Annually, 1.4 million people are killed in automobile accidents. It is a very, very significant number. However, when you drill down on the numbers, and 1.4 is a big number, half of the people who are killed in car accidents weren't actually in the car. They were pedestrians, they were on bicycles, they were on motorcycles, they were on scooters, they were walking down the street. That's 1 out of every 2 people killed. And then if you drill down even further, you'll find that 76% of those people actually were killed at night. And this incident rate occurs not only for deaths, but for just for any kind of incident. So basically, automobile incidents at night is more than 3/4 of all incidents that occur, especially when it comes to fatalities. It's quite staggering.
Can you combine this technology with many other technologies that are existing in the market? And if so, how does it work in tandem?
Yeah. So, we don't envision, nor do we advocate that the use of our particular sensor and software suite should be used independent of other sensors and software that are already existing in the vehicles or coming to market. The basic premise is that we fill a gap in the overall sensor suite with the uniqueness of what we do. We build a system based on thermal imaging and then computer vision based on thermal imaging. So there's still going to be visual cameras in the cars, and they're still going to do what they do, but they degrade at night, just like humans degrade at night. They degrade in foul weather. So whether it's raining, snowing, sleet, or if it's just smoky or foggy, cameras will degrade. Thermal cameras, their degradation in these conditions is a couple orders of magnitude less degradation. We supplement these visual cameras. We supplement radars. We supplement IMUs. We supplement all the other sensors to make a more robust overall system. And again, going back to the statistics, the nighttime operation of these vehicles is definitely in question. Just like humans degrade at night in terms of their visualization, so do the current sensor suites that are in the cars, and they just need to be better.
You said you've done some work with the Air Force. Have you been able to do some testing of your systems on the road and with humans at this point?
Well, subsequent to our Air Force work, which was done before we founded the company, we have done work with the DoD as AL, mainly for what we call off-road. So we've developed systems that are not on pavement. The sensor systems obviously work fine, but the software systems need to be slightly modified to work whether it's on-road or off-road. So yes, we do that. And we've already done that with the DoD. But in terms of actual testing, so the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which is part of the Department of Transportation, actually is well aware of the statistics that I just articulated. And it has become quite an issue. So we've seen that the U.S. Congress under the Infrastructure Act has actually created line items to address pedestrian safety, as well as the European Union has now created regulatory response. So in the United States, we now have regulations out there that are going to be mandatory by the end of the year that says you must be able to stop for a pedestrian at night at high speed. And that's going to be a minimum requirement to sell a vehicle in the United States by 2028. We see similar regulations in the European Union. So these problems are not lost on governments. Now, about a year ago, NHTSA published a preliminary set of recommendations, which ultimately is going to become the final regulations. So we took those specifications. We went out to Detroit and rented time on a test track. We got a test vehicle. We took our full system. We mounted it on the system. We hired a test driver, and we hired a third-party test company. And we ran through the suite of NHTSA tests. Now, you said with real people. We asked our interns whether they wanted to volunteer to run in front of the cars at 45 miles an hour. We couldn't get anybody to agree, so we used what's called electronic dummies. So these are mannequins that are on tracks. They're heated to give a thermal signature, and you drive the vehicle down the track. You hit a laser that triggers a certain speed and time, and that triggers the dummy to run in front of the vehicle, such to time it such that right when the car gets there. So that was the test that we did. We did this 12 times under different configurations. We never struck the dummy. Now, the same test that we were testing against has been tested against 21 production vehicles. And under the conditions that we tested against, almost every one of those vehicles ran over the dummy at one point in time or more. The vehicles that are out there are not currently capable of passing these tests. We passed it every time.
That's really cool. But as you know, the cost of testing is quite enormous. Have you been able to use digital twins, for instance? You have a lot of background in making chips, IoT sensors. Have you been able to do some kind of simulation without necessarily having it all live?
The concept of a digital twin in automotive is a full system level test. And there are a couple of companies that we are working with who are moving to digital twins for thermal. The digital twin that's exactly identical to our solution is not yet available, but it will be in the coming months. So we are working with two companies that'll help us build a full digital twin. That's a tool that we feed up at the system level. So that goes up to the full system simulation. It is also being requested by our customers.
Would a system like yours be a good addition to, say, autonomous vehicles at one point or the other when we get into, level 3, level 4 automation?
So for those who are deeply in the know, a number of level 4 vehicles are on the road today with thermal imagers. So they have been early adopters of thermal imaging technology. There's a number of vehicles that you'll see in San Francisco. Those are outfitted with existing thermal cameras. These are predecessor thermal imagers that had been available from companies kind of automotive specific. And because of that, all of these companies that are currently driving are asking for our auto-specific solution that we're developing. So they're waiting for our next-gen cameras to supplement or replace what they're using now. But yes, it's absolutely a technology being used by anybody in the level 4 space.
So you said that what you're building is auto specific. In what ways is it different from the existing thermal solutions that are currently available?
Let's take it to the take it up a couple levels. There's a couple fundamental things. So thermal cameras in general have been available for decades now. For the first decade, 10 to 12 years, thermal cameras were primarily and almost solely used for defense purposes. They were kind of brought to market through defense R&D, and they were regulated. But starting about 10 to 12 years ago, thermal cameras started to come onto the market for non-defense applications. So industrial use, firefighting, various levels of inspection, anything to do with electronics, tracking your power line grids, anything that has the potential for a heat signature that you could see. So that developed into a multi-million-dollar market. But no singular application was sufficient to justify the business. So the cameras were built somewhat generically to be able to support a dozen to 15 different applications. So they would build a general sensor, and then they would put it into a different chassis with some slightly different software, and they would market it to different applications, maritime being another example. However, in terms of performance, in terms of cost, in terms of sensitivity, these systems can be applied in automotive, but they're just not cost effective. They lack resolution, they lack some performance, and they're expensive. So in order to go into the automotive space, something had to be built from the ground up with the understanding of the end application. So we basically look at driving up resolution, right? And there's a number of reasons for that. Driving down the overall cost, making sure that the systems will work with computer vision systems, which means that they can work independent of humans. They're not purely for visualization, they're for computer visualization. That's a whole different scenario than the traditional cameras that are out there. And then finally, making sure that there's an ecosystem that can manufacture these things in volume. So those were 4 factors that didn't previously exist or weren't addressed by the manufacturers that currently provide these systems today. And those were the challenges that we had to address to make an automotive specific camera. And then, of course, you have to be able to qualify it for automotive. So you need an ASIL B, an ASIL or an ASIL D type of standard, which is also part of the design criteria.
Having been through a few startups myself, I know how energizing as well as exhausting these startups can be. What motivated you to do yet another startup? And that too at a time when there's so much chaos going on in the market.
I am a startup CEO. I'm a startup founder. I've been doing this for a number of years. This is my 5th startup company. I was involved in a company that was sold to Intel. I was involved in a company that was sold to PMC Sierra. I was involved in another company that's still very much a going concern and a profitable entity, where you see the fruits of that technology almost every time you watch an NBA or NFL game. They build technology that you see during those games. And it's where my passion lies. It's very simple. I would want to get up in the morning and I want to be passionate about what I do. I found an opportunity to advance the state of the art, advance the state of the industry, advance the technology, and provide a give back. We build a very, very safety-centric solution. So there's no trouble getting up in the morning and no trouble being excited about what I do.
That's really cool to hear. And you've done all these startups. Have these startups changed who you are? Are you a different person now than when you started all these companies?
Yes, absolutely. You're constantly learning, you're constantly evolving, and you're constantly trying to anticipate what will come next. And with experience comes the ability to do all of those things just a little bit better. It's a tried and true statement, but you don't know what you don't know. And you become more cognizant of that the more experience that you have. And the younger you are and the earlier in your career, the more belief that you've kind of got it wired. Over the years, you learn you don't have it wired. You're trying to anticipate what will come in the future, and you're trying to build foundations that can mitigate or deflect those problems that are going to arise. And so it's about how do you construct a company so foundationally it's solid, And then everything you put on top of it is built on that solid foundation. And you continue this process over and over and over again, because the unknown or the pivot or the discontinuity is an inevitability, and you need to be ready for it. And that's what you learn over time.
Chuck, definitely your company was one of the more interesting companies I heard from at Silicon Catalyst. That's why I'm asking you all these questions.
Well, thank you
Um,
very much. I appreciate that.
one other question. There's a lot of concern today about the fact that with all this automation, people won't have enough to do. I mean, Elon Musk said, all we have to do is relax, sit back, and robots will do everything for us. What are your thoughts on where technology is headed and what we'll be doing as things progress?
So I was told there wasn't going to be any political questions on this.
Oh, this is not political.
Is it theoretically possible that we could replace truck drivers with automated trucks? And the answer is yes, it is theoretically possible, and it's to a certain extent it's happening. But on the flip side, today we don't have enough long-haul truck drivers. There's a shortage of truck drivers available to long-haul trucking. So the motivation of creating a robot that can do this job is actually to fill a gap that already exists in the market in terms of the labor that doesn't exist to fill it. Yet, by creating a robot that does automatic trucking, we create a whole nother industry of people who built the robot to do automatic trucking and make them better. So the concept of whether automation, robotics, AI obsolete various labor and trades and expertise, by definition they do. But then they create whole new industries that have to service that. So one replaces the other.
Very true. And as people get older, it's actually unsafe to drive by yourself. So any augmentation can help. And what are your thoughts on careers? The rate at which things are changing, it's hard for somebody to figure out what they want to do. There are new opportunities, but what's the best way a student today can prepare themselves for the opportunities that are going to arise in future?
So I'll give you a personal. I have a daughter, I have a son. They both went on to college, and we had a 529, and we saved plenty of money, and we told them that we would fund their college educations with a caveat. You have to get a STEM degree. And that's not to degrade other professions, but as long as they were getting something that was STEM oriented, we would supplement the cost of that. And both of my children went in that direction. Technology is critical, science is critical, medicine is critical. These are the industries of the future. And AI obviously is critical. So you need to look over the horizon a little bit and be realistic about what is the next 20 to 30 years of innovation? Where does it lie? And if you are part of that, then you have a 20 to 30-year career, maybe a 40-year career. But if you're not honest with yourself about what the future holds, then you do run the risk of educating yourself in a way that you're less marketable. Not saying not marketable, but less marketable.
True, and that was the scenario when I got into college. I learned pure mathematics, but the jobs and the opportunities were more in engineering. You have done a variety of things from chips to IoTs to analog, mixed signal design, and now complete systems. Which part of the journey have you enjoyed the most?
If I had to pick one, I have an affinity for semiconductors, and I've been validated over the last few years. So for a long time, and I think you're smiling because you've been there, having spent 3+ decades in the semiconductor industry, I had to tell people that I built chips and they were not potato chips, right? We've all had that experience, many years ago, having to explain what a chip was. Here we sit in 2023, and you no longer have to explain to anybody what a chip is. It's on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. It's on the front page of the New York Times. It's on the front page of the Washington Post. It's the key discussion point between President Biden and Xi at their most recent conference. We all know what the CHIPS Act are. It's like everything came full circle. And now we're involved in things that are the economic engine of the world. and also a strategic engine within the world. It's quite remarkable where things have come.
It's almost like Revenge of the Nerds, right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
We've been working at it for 30 plus years, and suddenly chips are the hardest thing, and we are welcome to the Siliconomy.
I want to address leadership versus management. As an entrepreneur and a company co-founder, you need all of the skill sets of good management. And you need to know how to build the foundation of a company and how to build the structure of a company and how to manage that and build KPIs and all these fundamental things that they talk about in business school in years past. But that unto itself doesn't make you successful as an entrepreneur. What makes you successful as an entrepreneur is that you have to develop leadership skills and you have to demonstrate those leadership skills. And you have to, first and foremost, define a vision, create a vision, prove your vision, message your vision, and then find people who share your vision. And then, and only then, do you have a chance of being successful. So at this point in my career, I do all those other things, but I also bring team members in to do all those other things, those management things, and they're critical. We don't do them right, we crash and burn. But in the absence of leadership, there'd be no company.
Very true. I've never been in a startup, which was like, start to finish, you have a plan and you execute and you're done. So there are all these ups and downs. So what kind of soft skills do you need to go through all these ups and downs and completely unpredictable things?
So let's go to the plan thing first. So I have a real simple rule of thumb. Your plan is wrong the moment you publish it. So I'll say it again. Your plan is wrong the moment you publish it. It doesn't mean that all your assumptions were incorrect or you don't know what you're doing. It just means that it's virtually impossible to get it right, perfectly right. So if you're not willing to recognize that your plan is wrong the moment you publish it, you're not constantly checking your plan for assumptions that have gone awry that you need to modify your plan to. So you need to assume that you don't know all the answers. You need to assume that either you have an assumption that was either false or some dynamic change to invalidate that assumption, and you need to react to it. Or you need to at least have a measurement criteria that says, if it changes by such and such or X, then I need to react to it. If it just changes by a little bit, we can accommodate it. And you need to be constantly monitoring that. So that's part of this change thing. In terms of soft skills, I have a very simple adage. It's sometimes hard to live up to, but I call it the go last rule. Go into a meeting, try to go last. The more senior you are in the meeting, the less you want to inadvertently influence the outcome by putting an opinion out there too soon. You want to elicit the views and counterpoints and points and counterpoints of everyone in the room before you bias the room. So that's a simple soft skill. Another simple soft skill is your objective as the founder, CEO, to not be the smartest person in the room. The goal is to surround yourself with people who are all brighter than you are, smarter than you are at the things that you brought them into the room for the reason that they're there, right? That's the essence of building a good organization and a good company, right? And then remember that the second hardest thing to do in a company is build a culture. Because the first hardest thing to do in a company is to change the culture that you already built. So get your culture right as soon as you possibly can, part of the foundation.
Yeah, culture really matters. What do they say? Culture will eat strategy for breakfast. I'm glad we are talking about all these things. You have seen many revolutions in your career. The PC revolution, then we had the internet, the dot-coms, social media, all these fintech companies, crypto, blockchain, and now we are on the verge of this big AI revolution. Uh, every time it looks like this is the one big thing, it's going to really change everything. Does it look like that to you this time around? Or is it no different from other times before? And how should we plan for it?
So technology has never really intimidated me, or the change in technology has never really intimidated me. And I've always embraced it. Everyone likes to say, oh, it's this revolution or that revolution. I don't necessarily buy into that. I think we live in something that's evolutionary, not revolutionary times, even when you talk about tech. I have another general rule of thumb. There'll be lots of technologists and engineers on the phone who will think this is blasphemy. But I think that the tech industry actually mirrors the fashion industry. And the reason I say that is in tech, what's old is new again. Just like in fashion, what is old is new again. So just like we have these fashion trends that come and then they go away, and then 10, 12 years later, they come back in a slightly different incarnation. We see the same thing happen in tech over and over and over again. So I'll give you an example. You've talked about the computer industry. So we all thought it was a revolution when Sperry Univac and IBM and DEC invented the mainframe computer. Well, then the mainframe computer, we had this revolution when Apple and Steve Jobs came and said, well, we're going to go to the personal computer. So we're going to take everything out of the back room. We're going to put it on your desktop. But now today, we took all the desktop computers and moved them to the cloud. Well, the cloud is a glorified term for a mainframe computer system. Just right. What is old is new again. So the tech moves around. Virtual machines were invented by IBM in the 70s, but now we take them for granted. It took 20 or 25 years before they became a mainstream technology and integrated in everything that we do. Tech reinvents itself. And what drives that is generally CPU cycles. So the more compute that's available, the ability to bring these ideas back and repurpose them. The initial mathematics for AI was in the 30s, came out in the 30s or 40s. And for every couple of decades, they tried to make AI a thing. Even I remember as far back as the 70s, when AI was a hot technology in the 70s, it never came to pass. Not enough compute. AI came to pass when compute came to a point that the mathematics could actually be completed in a reasonable series of time. And now AI, today's great thing. So compute ultimately drives it, but the actual implementation that rides on top of compute seems to be a recurring theme over time, similar to the fashion industry. So I always say, as a good marketeer, if you want to know how to market your product, look backwards to when somebody had an analogous solution and how they took that to market, and then apply that to what you're doing.
Very interesting. I never thought in terms of fashion. And yes, we go in some kind of, not exactly concentric, but we go in recurring fashions. What
Recurring
happens?
cycle of introduction. It falls out of favor, it comes back. It falls out of favor, it comes back. You can see the patterns over and over again.
And that reminds me, in the AI industry, as you correctly pointed out, it's well over 70 years old. We have had some successes along the way, AutoCAD, electronic design systems, but they were very specific. And now looks like we're doing a lot more automation in cars and vehicles. But do you see that we could be going at some point towards artificial general intelligence or augmented general intelligence, that anybody can use it for any purpose? Or is it still limited to specific things?
Well, I'm never going to say that I can unequivocally see over the horizon to the future and know exactly what's going to happen. Ideally, AI is a tool, and then ideally, AI is a series of tools. And those tools can be applied to a whole range of different applications and different services. Do we get to the point where it's completely generalized? I guess it's possible, but I can see an awful lot of work that needs to happen between now and then.
And this is the reason I'm talking to you and to many people, because no one has a crystal ball. And I ask difficult questions sometimes just so that we can gather our views and see things in
So,
different
so
ways.
let's take your question and apply my thesis from the previous statement.
Uh,
What's old is new again. So I'm sure many of your listeners can remember the first time they back when they had a car phone, and that car phone was actually physically in their vehicle. So they weren't handheld iPhones or Androids like we have today, but they all came with voice recognition systems, of which none of them worked. But today we have Amazon products and Google products that sit right in your home, and you can talk right to it and ask it to play your favorite song on Spotify, and it'll go right to the song and play it. It completely understands your voice. It understands lots of different voices. So voice recognition is now taken for granted. That is AI. But that was literally 15 years or more of innovation to mature it to the point that you could talk to your Alexa the way you can, maybe 20 years since the initial products came to market. So I'm not saying that the rate of change isn't going to accelerate, but I'm just telling you how difficult it is to make just a singular application ubiquitous. We work in the computer vision world using AI. We're in the early days of computer vision. Yes, today we can go and we can ask our computer to show us pictures of cats, right? And it can use AI to show us lots of cats and tell us that those are cats and those are dogs and so forth. But that's still in the infancy. To be able to build systems that can actually interpret the world as they see it real time across lots of different variables, that's not a trivial problem. And it's not going to be fixed just because we got Chat GPT. That doesn't solve that problem. We have a ways to go before we get to this concept of generalized AI.
I guess we'll need cat GPT to recognize cats, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people who are away from technology have much higher expectations than you and I, who have worked with technology and seen its limitations. And therefore, we are much more cautious when making predictions because it just takes so long to get anything perfect. Today's systems, by the way, can recognize not only the right words, but also accents and many other languages, which is amazing compared to 20
Oh,
years ago.
no doubt. Voice recognition is a very, very amazing technology
Advanced.
today
Yeah.
and advanced. But 20 years ago, when they introduced it, not so much.
Likewise, I think a computer vision will have to go through the whole cycle of advancement and accuracy that is needed to be able to do things with images, right?
And again, we do it today. But to make it completely as ubiquitous as an Alexa in your home, we got a little ways to go.
Well, Chuck, it's a delight to talk to you, and it's a great way for me to get to know you in the process. And to people out there who are listening, I'm always looking for new ideas and new ways of, thinking about the problems and about the future. None of us has a simple crystal ball to predict accurately what's going to happen. Many times when we've predicted, things have happened much faster. But things like robots taking over the world has never happened, and we don't know what it'll take to get there. So please come forward. I want to hear your stories. And Chuck, I think you guys are up to something really amazing. And so good luck to you, to all autonomous imaging. And I look forward to hearing success stories. And maybe we should talk to you soon in the next few months about where you are and what you guys will be doing at that time.
Sounds great. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.